Disrupted Land is a documentary film that aims to bring facts and rationality back to the discussion on land and land reform in South Africa. Land reform is not just some government policy. It has become a political weapon that is vengefully used by the ruling elite as part of a bigger political and revolutionary strategy. It is not simply an idea to enhance prosperity in South Africa. It is, at least in the way it is being proposed currently, a deceitful double whammy. Firstly, the debate about land reform and the push to take back the land deflects the attention from the failures of the South African government. Secondly, and more important, it is a great leap forward, excuse the pun, in a predetermined revolutionary strategy. A strategy that sets political power as an end goal and not the prosperity of the people. Disrupted Land is a film by Forum Films, and it was produced in partnership and cooperation with AfriForum. It will also form part of AfriForum's campaign for the protection of property rights and the campaign against expropriation without compensation. The film will be available on YouTube, and we will embark on a follow-up trip to the USA in April. And the purpose of this film, and the reason also why we are launching it today or publishing it today, is because we intend to take the film with us and to present copies to the people who we plan on speaking with. Now, I should say that we aren't opposed to all forms of land reform, as you will see in this film as well. But we do point out that there is an important difference between restitution and redistribution of land, and that the push for expropriation without compensation is based on three important distortions. The first is the distortion of history, and I'm slightly nervous to talk about the distortion of history because last time I did so before an audience, the audience didn't take it very well. Renowned historian Herbert Butterfield said that the study of the past with one eye upon the present is the source of all sins and sophistries in history. It is the essence of what we mean by the word unhistorical. And this is a point that you will see is emphasized in Disrupted Land. To truly understand history, you cannot and should not evaluate historic events through the lens of our modern worldview. A great deal of things happen in South Africa that we can today agree on that it was wrong. And we should agree on many things about history in South Africa. But to truly understand history, we need to understand the circumstances and the choice set that people were faced with many decades or even centuries ago. As we have said before, when we discuss the acquisition of land, we have to agree then that there were three ways. If the question is how did white people acquire land, there were three ways in which white people acquired land, which are also pointed out in the film. The first is through settlement on empty land. The second is through the purchase of land through treaties and negotiations. And the third, which is the most controversial but also the least significant, is conquest. And as you will see in the film, the cases in which land was acquired through conquest was marginal by comparison. In the film, we point out that the aggressive push for land reform to address the so-called hunger for land is misleading, as the hunger for land, particularly with regard to agricultural or rural land, is largely a myth. We know today, for example, that 84% of land claims were filed in urban areas, that 93% of land claimants have said that they would prefer financial compensation as opposed to land, and a study by the Institute of Race Relations has found that the amount of people who believe that more land reform would improve their lives is 1%. On the economic side, in his groundbreaking work, Economics in One Lesson, Henry Hazlitt argued that to understand economics is not as difficult as many economists make it out to be. He points out that there's one overarching lesson that you need to understand about economics, or one lesson that differentiates the great economists from the mediocre ones. This one lesson of economics is this: the art of economics consists in looking not merely at the immediate, but at the longer effects of any act or policy. It consists in tracing the consequences of that policy not merely for one group, but for all groups. In other words, the question of whether an idea is a good idea should not be tested on what the immediate consequence thereof would be, but by the long-term consequences of this effect. And the value of this lesson is as clear as it could be when we talk about expropriation without compensation. But we should acknowledge that the push for expropriation without compensation is not merely an economic policy, but part of a calculated national democratic revolution, as we will point out in the film. It is, in all fairness, a spin-off of National Socialism. It is black nationalism because it is the president using the words "our people" to refer to black people, or the deputy president saying that there will be a violent takeover if whites don't voluntarily hand over their land, or Zweli Mkhize assuring us that no property of a black person will be touched when they expropriate without compensation. But it is also socialism because it is a revolution in which the government is presented as the savior, in which power is centralized in the state, who presumably knows better than the rest of society, and who will make decisions on our behalf on what will be good for us. It is a revolutionary ideology of freedom for the people. But there's a twist. The people means us, our community. And if you are not us, then you are the enemy. And if you are the enemy, then you are evil. And if you are evil, then you don't deserve freedom. This is a conflict of visions, as Thomas Sowell puts it. There are two opposing views, two opposing visions. We have one group who continuously asks the question, what have we done wrong and what can we do to improve our lives? And then we have another group who continuously asks the question, what are all the ways in which we have been wronged by other people and what can we now do to them in response? It is not merely a matter of double standards, of cherry picking or of inconsistency. It is about the pursuit of a revolution. And we are not merely dealing with an establishment who thinks that the state knows better. It is a liberation movement pushing for a revolution and who have decided strategically that the best mechanism to achieve the goals of the revolution is the state. And if you think that this sounds conspiratorial, or if you want evidence of this, then you need to look no further than the ruling party's own strategy and tactics documents. To dispel or to deny this is to play into the hands of the revolutionary movement. This is to be naive and at your own peril. Friedrich Hayek said that fascism and communism are not essentially the same thing. Communism is an illusion. Fascism is real. But fascism is the stage that is reached after communism has proved an illusion. So now we have this proposal from academic and some agricultural circles that perhaps we only need to hand over 80% of the land. According to the Pareto Principle, we all know that 80% of the food is produced by 20% of the farmers. So if only we can ensure that that 20% will remain, we will still have food security if 80% of the land is redistributed or something like that. Now you have to ask yourself, how far do you need to have strayed from reality to honestly think that this is a good idea? Firstly, you have to be ignorant of the fact that in order to maintain a stable business output, you need to be in a stable environment. If you destroy 80% of the environment by attacking property rights and initiating a process that, according to government, has already led to 95% failure, the remaining 20% will also fail. But here is the point, the more important point. What I've just said is insignificant in comparison to the bigger discussion that we ought to be having, the moral argument. To agree to a position like this is to concede to the claim that white people are criminals if they own land, and that the land has to be taken back from them. It is to buy into a distortion of history by political activists. It is to sell your soul to feed the crocodile, hoping that it would eat you last. It is to shoot yourself while trying to convince others that you are engaging in self-defense. We seem to believe that the problems will go away if the people who point to the problems will simply go away. And therefore we have people in South Africa who confuse the fire brigade with the fire starters. We so want badly, at least some people, so badly want to be on the side of the fire starter, but they know that the fire will destroy them. So what do? They attack the fire brigade. They attack the people who are trying to extinguish the fire. They claim that their siren is too loud while they ignore the fire. We should not be deterred by this. We need to acknowledge the problem for what it is. We need to engage in the battle of ideas, and we need to be factual, and we need to have better arguments. But while our arguments are important, we ought to be reminded, as Robert Greene points out, that in the political arena, you don't win with your arguments. You win with your actions. So let us make sure that our arguments are solid, but that we take this merely as a starting block for action to be taken. We hope that Disrupted Land will be of help in this regard, because if we buy into this distortion, or if we buy into self-destructive arguments, self-destructive arguments that is currently pushed by some people and a certain section of the agricultural community, it will be the end of us. And it will be of our own making. This is an idea that will destroy us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We hope that you enjoy Disrupted Land.